Okay, I would like to show you this morning another over-the-board game from recently, the 8th of April. This was played away in the North Circular Chess League against Wandsworth Chess Club. I was playing Larry Marden, and I was with the black pieces. And for some reason, I just don't feel as hyped up in this league, or I haven't been in the last few games. And prior to this, I'd actually drawn 4 games. I was yet to win a game in this league or lose. So could this be a decisive game after my 4 draws, which I was getting, it was getting to be a bit of a pain to me. I was wondering why in this league I'm just not as enthusiastically motivated. I know it's like a 6-board match compared to an 8 in the Middlesex League, for example. I just feel more hyped up for some reason when there's 8. Maybe greater camaraderie. I don't know what it is. But I found this game a gigantic struggle, to be honest, and it's as though the game was going in slow motion at many points in it. I tried to play dynamically, so I chose what I thought was a dynamic aggressive opening. I don't know how many of you will agree with this, but I played the Benko Gambit. So after c5, d5, b5. It's a little bit unsound, of course, but the time limit here in club chess is much faster than FIDE time controls. It's like 30 moves in an hour and a quarter, and then 15. So the game could last a maximum of 3 hours in length. And such a gambit system, I thought, could unsettle the opponent. Larry. I keep saying, I'm thinking Leonard, like Leonard Nimoy. No, Larry Marden. Larry. He took, and he played. He took again. He played a very interesting and good system, I think. We'll follow this on Livebook. After d6, he played e4. And I think this is just called the castling by hand variation. After g6, knight f3 here in this particular position, bishop g7. And now this is a very popular move now, h3 instead of g3. g3 is the most popular with 654 games, but h3, so I think it's just called castling by hand. I've got this in my my score sheet, white castles by hand, Benko/Volga Gambit, white castles by hand, funny enough. So if you consider g3 as an alternative, I mean, this is weakening a little bit the light squares, but mind you, I haven't got a light square bishop, and the king can go in one go here. This doesn't weaken the light squares, and the king in 2 goes can go here. So h3, it's not, it's been played before. I played knight bd7, king g1. White's a pawn up, basically, and now it's going to move the rook. White's a pawn up. From the engine perspective here, White's got a slight advantage, not a full point, just 0.14, so Black's got some compensation. I played knight e8, so I want to play this kind of maneuver, which Michael Adams once played against me in Lloyd's Bet Masters many years back when he played the Benko Gambit against me. This kind of maneuver, even if you get double pawns, you're kind of getting more dynamic play, more pressure potentially on White. It's a standard sort of maneuver to consider. Rook e2 was played, knight c7, bishop g5. Here I protect that. Interestingly, and I would like to show you this actually from a theoretical point of view, before committing the rook here, although the engine suggests that, there's a very interesting idea, which after king g1, just rewind back here, queen b6. Players with black have actually have been playing here. Well, there's a couple of games in Livebook. Well, after castling king h2, this position, pardon me, very popular in this position is not to stick the rook here. The point of the Benko Gambit, you've got this B file. We can observe you've got the B file. So where do the rooks actually belong? Does a rook belong on e8? This maneuver is attractive. Let's agree on that the maneuver is attractive. But does the rook belong on e8? Not necessarily. And players with black have been playing it like this, with queen a5, putting the rook on b8, and you might think, well, you can't then do this manoeuvre, which is attractive. You can't do that. Well, you can actually, because here, after bishop g5, players have been playing king f8. I know it's crazy. There's a few games with king f8 here. But you're not tying down an entire rook resource to the defense of e7, and you've still got this knight b5. And this kind of position is kind of almost dynamic equality here, because these pawns, if they're not going anywhere, if you can clamp down on e5, b4 and a4, that's pretty good news. There's a kind of dynamic equality here. Rook a3, the a pawn's definitely not going anywhere. And this position is okay. You know, it's a lockdown position, which is difficult for white to kind of break black's pressure bind. The extra pawn is kind of nullified. But you see in this configuration, these rooks are working well together, and the king, is handling the e7 pawn. Now, if you contrast this to the way I've played this in my game, I actually played the queen here, so actually the rook's not actually pressurizing b2, and this isn't really as good at all. After bishop, a whole rook resource being, for the defense of the e pawn. I put the queen there. Now knight b6, and at the moment, this is where the game started to go in slow motion. I thought, what have I done? I'm just really a pawn down here, and my opponent is probably slowly preparing the e5 break, not the e5 e6, the e5 break. Well, at the moment, it might not be crushing. If e5 here, I mean, you've always got to look at this, but d5 is weakened, so queen b7, and it might actually be quite good for black, this position. So he can't do that like prematurely, because d5 could be weak. Maybe stronger as knight takes, but anyway, you get the idea that e5 is a serious break to have a lock on in general. So he plays b3 here, queen a5, and I'm not doing anything. The problem is with my position, I've got no constructive plan at move 18. So this horrible castling by hand variation, I'm left with nothing to do at the moment. Bishop d2, I move the queen back. Bishop f4, and now it really looks as though e5 is on the cards. What have I done? What have I done wrong in this game? As I say, this rook just doing nothing here. I've got no pressure here. I've got no lock and key on e5. And you might think, well, why couldn't white have prepared this in what I showed you before? Just for a moment, okay. There are three breaks to put a lock on key on. These three are the three breaks if you're going to be a pawn down in Benko Gambit. But for a moment, okay, this is at move 20. Remember this position, bishop f4 with e5. If we just go back to what most players are playing, and we want to prepare e5 for white, let's go with bishop f4, preparing e5 for white. Here, it's just not on the cards so much because of knight d4. This keeps an equality. There's pressure on this knight d4 also helps against e5. So knight d4 is a right pain against e5. And if you think like knight takes b5, if white was playing knight takes b5 first, then again you might think, well, isn't e5 on the cards? Well, we can just take that there. Sorry, if white is tied down a lot and okay tries to prepare e5 like this, then okay, bishop takes b2. There's pressure on the queen side against e5 basically. So this shouldn't really happen. This shows that something's gone badly wrong. That in my game, e5 is on the cards. That is basically a strategic disaster. That e5 has become so evidently possible. This is just a strategic disaster on the cards. I try and slow it down with Queen B7. Okay. So E5 can just take the D5 pawn. He just builds on D5 first. So E5 on the cards. Now the engine is not really too bothered by this at the moment, but the evaluation has now gone up a little bit more for white to 0.41 here, even after knight A6, which it's recommending. So here, if E5 here, then knight B4. And apparently this isn't so bad apparently here, even if this E5 break happens. You might be concerned like structurally here, but apparently this does open up the bishop though, and apparently black's okay. This is quite a pleasant position. So E5, yeah, okay, it's not the end of the world here, but I was worried about it. Perhaps too much. Maybe the threat is stronger than the execution. Certainly for what I played. Yeah, this does look like a good response. I played an awful move. You shouldn't do this. I think I was just getting annoyed by this game, and the game was starting to go in slow motion. I don't know, on the away matches I'm slightly more tired, perhaps getting there, driving there. I played F6, and it's just a terrible move. Please do not play this in your own games unless you're absolutely, it's just awful. It's just absolutely terrible to play F6. You know, even like knight D7 is possible. This position wouldn't be as bad, although white does seem to be making some sort of progress. But with F6, it's just a gross move to play. After Queen E2, I'm left without any real plan at all. You might wonder what is all the problem about here. Well, let's see. After knight D7, rook D1. You know, this is on the cards. For example, the classic, putting the knight on C4. I play knight E5, which doesn't really help things, and I thought he could almost win by force here with taking like this, almost, because D takes weakens the C pawn, and F takes kind of invites knight G5 to E6, and I thought this is almost winning. So say here, this is just horrible. This position, it's just horrible. You can see that huge knight on D5. You know, you can start winning material like this, knight C7. But the engine suggests it's not as bad as all that actually. Just to allow the knight maybe to just leave it, not take that, to give white the D5 square. Of course, engines don't panic. Yeah, that's the key thing. They look at all the available resources. They're not panicking about things. They're not making things worse unnecessarily. They're playing the best move all the time. It doesn't matter if there's apparently huge knight on E6 here. There's no panic to it. Fine. So anyway, I'm a bit panicky though. He took actually with the knight, which I thought I was grateful for, instead of the bishop. But even so, this is a bad structure. Trust me, this is a bad structure. I've got some F-file. You might think there's some F-file pressure, but the reason, okay, why this is a bad structure, white can just play F3 at any point to not really give much counterplay here, and work on playing A4 and B4, and that's basically what he does. F3. And I thought, what am I doing here? What is white doing here? White's just going to play A4 and then sort out the B pawn later. I try and move the knight over here to set up some attempt at counterplay or attack. Knight B5 immediately here. Knight F6. Rook B1. So now B4 is going to hit this pawn chain hard with B4. It's diabolical. Really, it's awful. And the game, it's like This game felt longer than any other over the board game the entire year. Actually, it just felt as though it was like an eternity. I tried to, when you get a bit impatient, I've got this little trick that if the opponent's got like 40 minutes, I'm thinking, well, they can't spend 10 minutes to move, because it's like they'll only last like 4 moves. I have this idea, it can't be like 10 minutes or more on every move, but it just seemed like an eternity. I tried going downstairs and coming back, and it's just a horrible position to play. Knight h5, b4. It's like I'm waiting for him to just grow his advantage here. This is a Benko Gambit disaster, because you're supposed to put a lock and key on b4 and a4, and this hasn't happened. The structure is just awful. The bishop's kind of blocked in. I've just killed my own piece as well, so there's less pressure on the queen side. So this is just an easy target structurally for a queenside attack like this. I try and play tactically with c4, and he could have just taken this. There's no big deal just taking this to be 2 pawns up. So here, knight c7, and this is just winning for white. Even if he goes into this self pin, white's going to untangle this. So with queen b3. Fine, 2 connected pass pawns here. But no, he actually played, he didn't take that pawn, he played knight c3. You can take the pawn at leisure. White's still got a massive position. I try rook a3 with some vague idea of making the rooks coordinate on f3. And with his knight coming here, I thought, well, is there some cheapos? There's knight d1 was played. I played knight f4. And basically I thought, yeah, taking is okay, and that's what he played. Or he could even just take here, and then just even allow this bishop to be liberated. This is fine. I'm just 2 pawns down here with very little compensation. This isn't great compensation. It's +2 for white, as you'd expect. 2 pawns down, +2, about +2. So anyway, knight f4. He just takes the pawn. He's 2 pawns up. It's a lost position. It's one of my most disastrous Gambit games all year so far. It's almost resignable, but it's a team match, and in a team match, you know, if you can swindle it, try to swindle it. Human chess is not, about just trying to play the scientifically best moves all the time. It's trying to win the game and trying to, give the opponent a chance to slip up. There's the classic example recently this year in 2014 where Nakamura was crushing Magnus Carlsen, but Magnus Carlsen allowed the possibility for a blunder, because that's how you can win, when the opponent blunders, and engines rarely blunder, so it's not as much fun playing engines. But when you're playing humans, you can set little traps, or you can play moves which are not theoretically the best move, but might give you this glimmer of hope, of human hope, this glimmer that you need. And it's in this position that I didn't play the best move in this position. The engine is suggesting just a slow def, king f7, rook b8. Do I want a slow def? Not particularly. I thought my rooks were sort of in theory coordinating on f3. I thought I can grab 2 pawns for the knight here. Of course I'm 2 pawns down already. I play knight takes g2, and simply in this position white can just take this knight, and it's nothing. The engine's laughing at this. This is +5. White can simply do this and play rook b3, and there's really nothing going on here. There's no naughtiness at all. White can even just get rid of both rooks, and this will be winning, because these are 2 connected passed pawns coming down here. This is just no big deal at all. The knight can safely guard the king and e4 here. This bishop's still virtually dead, and white's just going to be playing like this. End of game. But you know what? Something really weird happened here. My opponent was a bit short of time and tried to win this another way by not taking the knight, by not entertaining these rooks being coordinated. To my utter delight, a glimmer of hope was created by this knight takes g2 move, which an engine wouldn't suggest in a million years, because engines try and play the best moves, even if they're in lost positions, which they, against humans they wouldn't be, but against other engines they might be. But even when you're playing if an engine's playing another engine, it's not really the whole concept of swindling or setting traps just doesn't exist in the engine era, in the engine sphere of chess. But here, this has created a glimmer of hope. It's undermined the pawn chain. It's damaged my opponent's king safety, and he played rook b3 to my delight. It gives me a hope that actually I've damaged my opponent's king safety, and the engine evaluation now has dropped to 0.00. If I just take the rook here, which I did, so we're at 0.00, exactly 0.00, believe it or not, in the first line suggested. So queen takes b3, and now knight h4. So why is this? To keep equality now, for white to actually keep equality, white has to play bishop e3, believe it or not. So that after taking here, this position is keeping equality, apparently. Like this, for example. With d3 here. And it's a strange kind of, I think there's too many weaknesses around white's king. Maybe it's kind of or even just this position, it's okay for black. But anyway, no, he didn't play that. He played rook c3, and now can you see what I played here? Okay, I'm faced with these two passed pawns, but I've damaged his king safety from that dodgy move. What does black play here? If I gave you 10 seconds, what would you play in this position? And this is one of the best moves now in the position. Okay, just queen b5, trying to get the queen in. It's not a sacrifice yet. The thing is, if I was delighted, because if rook d3, which he didn't play this, actually knight takes f3 is possible. Is taking queen e2 check, and I should be okay with even queen takes d2. There might be enough time, against these pawns. If taking here, these pawns are just, I don't think they're going anywhere. This would lead to a disaster. His king safety's been compromised in the rook f3 line, in the rook d3 line rather. He played actually bishop g5, and it looks tempting because the knight looks stranded. Where can the knight go? He's protecting f3 like this. And you might think, well, isn't there a tactic with queen e2 or knight takes f3? If knight takes f3, white's actually better with rook takes f3, and here has king g3, protecting everything. The queen is protecting the knight, the king is helping protect the rook, and that's over for black. So I have to play here queen e2 check. And now it looks as though king g3, where's the knight going? The knight's stranded again. Oh dear, the king is protecting the pawn. If knight g2, then white will be better here with rook c2, because after taking, king takes g2, and again white's in the driving seat. White's got this big passed pawn. He's going to start pushing that, let alone bishop takes e7. However, okay, after king g3, there's a much better idea than knight g2. I wonder if you can spot what I played in this position. If I give you 10 seconds, you might want to pause the video. So 10 seconds starting from now. Okay, I played Queen G2. I gave the knight on H4, and you might think, why? What does black play here? I hope you can spot it here. What does black play in this position? Actually, there's a few winning moves in this position. The king is very precariously placed. Even though the knight seems to be covering an important square F2 on this diagonal, it's still, the king is actually in mortal danger, believe it or not. There's two moves, given is equally strong, basically, and efficient. Can you spot one of them? Okay, 200 points for either H6 or one I played, which was actually, I thought, quite cute. Rook F4, forced, and now bishop, bishop takes F4 was forced. Bishop F6 mating. So bishop G5. I've got a choice of either queen takes or bishop takes. A swindle. It helped draw the match. This thing does happen in human chess. That's why it's so much more fun to play human opponents, not computer opponents. You can achieve swindles much more easily, or play moves, especially logically. If you're in a lost position, you've fallen off the mountain. You know the mountain climbing metaphor about endpoint theory. You've already fallen off the mountain. You've got nothing to lose from trying to generate the glimmer of hope of winning the game. So you don't have to play best moves all the time. You can set the possibility for error a bit more on the opponent. So that's what I think Magnus Carlsen was alluding to when he played Nakamura, say, trying to keep the opponent's position one move away from a blunder. So if you're losing, you have to try and do that. Keep the possibility of the opponent losing somehow. And by not taking the knight, he could have just taken the knight in this game. It was a disastrous game strategically up to that point. But yeah, I mean, however, if you don't try the Benko Gambit and get the pain of what can happen if things go badly wrong in a Benko Gambit, which is one of the more respected gambits, then it's difficult to get the insights about not playing like this, not killing your bishop, trying to keep the breaks on E5, B4, and A4. These sort of things become much more evident if you give it a go. It is a risky opening. But I kind of wanted to wake myself up as well by playing a risky, exciting opening to make sure, because I seem to lack the intense drive I've had in another league with more players per match, 8 boards versus 6 boards. Something was missing. So it turned out that, after my 4 draws, this was my swindle game to win, which I could have equally lost. I hope you got something from it. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.